And joining us now to take a look at the weather situation for the first week of October, Eric Snodgrass with Nutrien joins us. Eric, good to catch up with you, buddy. And hard to believe it's October already, man. Where is this year going?
I don't know. I think for guys that have jobs like we do, where there's a daily cadence that you have to just meet a bunch of short deadlines, the days just fly by. I'm like, it is October, and here we are. Looking at we've had pretty wide open harvest windows, and we've avoided for the most part anything to be disruptive. But it's October, so we should expect change at some point.
Definitely. Well, we're going to talk about those harvest windows here in a minute. I want to touch on Hurricane Ian now that that has gone through Florida and parts of the Southeast, the Carolinas, etc. And we look at some of the devastation we saw in certain areas. What are your thoughts looking at Ian now that has impacted the country and started to move on?
Yeah, I think when it's all said and done, we'll probably find Ian sitting somewhere in the top 10 most expensive U.S. natural disasters, just given the way it cut across Florida. And on top of that, excuse me, it produced, up to 2 feet of rain in parts of Florida. Then it, hooked out into the open Atlantic, came back in North Carolina, South Carolina, where over the weekend they saw some places between 3 and 8 inches of rain. It's kind of a critical time year for them, just given that they do a lot of double cropping in places. So some of the crops still need to finish. It could really affect the stand quality. But the most difficult thing for a lot of us was that, earlier in the week when we were watching Ian, there was a lot of consensus that we were going to bring rain into Georgia, hitting the cotton crop. We were going to bring rain into eastern halves of Tennessee and Kentucky. In fact, last week when we talked, I thought we would see rain almost getting to your area. At least you'd see the cloud cover. But man, that front that sat over Florida just kept diverting it farther and farther east. So I mean, just a reminder that it's hard to predict these things, but we do stay on top of them and keep up with the latest updates. But Ian was devastating, and we're going to continue to hear this week about all the problems that Ian's going to cause.
Anything else you're seeing come out of the tropics right now? I believe I saw over the weekend a big storm on the western coast of Mexico, but that shouldn't impact anything too much in the U.S. But anything else you're seeing in the tropics right now?
Yeah, but the only thing you're going to get out of that system that's off the west coast of Mexico is it's going to bring some moisture into the Four Corner states, which have had just a phenomenal year for the southwest monsoon. But that's about it. No, it's not even going to. Just the northern edge of the moisture is going to get there. We're watching two areas in the tropics, but neither threaten the United States. There's one just to the east of the Lesser Antilles, but it's looking to go into Central America if it develops. National Hurricane Center gave that a 40% chance. And then there's one that's way out in the middle of the Atlantic that they've given a 70% chance of developing, but it's supposed to go right up the middle part of the Atlantic and decay there. So good news is we're backing away from that in the near term.
Well, Eric, let's talk about the harvest windows ahead here for the U.S. I know we've had pretty good harvest weather the last couple of weeks, really giving us a chance to accelerate. I know we're talking frost, though, more frost for parts of the upper Midwest. So as you look at that harvest window here getting into October, what are you seeing and what's the latest on some of that frost potential?
Yeah, I think the thing that I was most impressed with the atmosphere, if I can even say that, right? If I was impressed with what it did over the weekend, was it's really started to cut off a low between Hawaii and Alaska. Now, why that matters for us is that if you cut off a low there, the jet stream just has to go around. It's like a split in a stream. So it ends up ridging over the west. We bring in northwest flow across the midsection of the country, and it just does two things. Produces a lot of upper level convergence, which builds high pressure. Things stay dry, which is good for harvest and fall application. But it also delivers shots of colder air. And the first one we're going to see will start to move into the northern plains, maybe Wednesday, but really getting there on Thursday and then sweep through, Thursday morning, Friday morning, Saturday morning. So for like Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, a frost at this point in October is about a week early compared to the median. It's certainly not unheard of course. But then into parts of Kentucky, over toward West Virginia, this would be an early frost by maybe up to 2 weeks. But anything that was planted late, of course, could get hit by this. But I don't hear a whole lot of folks worried about it, given how quickly the crop caught up with some of the summer heat we saw in the midsection of the country. But just get ready, because this Saturday morning, like right here in my home state of Illinois, I'm going to a harvest festival over in Springfield, Lincoln Memorial Gardens. I told my parents, like, hey, we're going to be dressing for winter in the early morning because it's going to be cold that morning.
So definitely something to watch here. But harvest, for the most part, as I said, has really accelerated along. I know combines are rolling. A lot of guys finding some better than expected yields as well, as I've heard, and it just feels like overall it's set us up for a pretty good fall harvest season. The weather has so far, Eric.
Yeah, and like I said, I think those windows are going to stay open through the middle of the month for the most part. If anything comes through, it's not like it's delivering, really heavy rainfall. Most of the time that what's coming through is generally less than, a quarter of an inch. We're not talking about much when it does come through. But, there's always a but when it comes to the forecast. I'm going to be watching the second half of the month, specifically once we get out there past the 20th. I'm starting to see some indications of the Pacific jet picking up momentum, which means we could start to close up these windows relatively quickly, but it may not be for another 15 to 20 days before we talk about that happening. But when you're in the combine, the time goes by very fast and you lose what you had in terms of time. So let's just keep an eye on it. Just something to watch for toward the end of this month.
Definitely. Let's talk South America as well. I think our weather focus is really shifting there now that we are getting our harvest underway / wrapped up. What's the latest you're seeing with some of the drought issues in Argentina and some of those rains starting up maybe in Brazil?
Well, the forecast models over the weekend were relatively unkind to Argentina. I mean, along the Paraná River into Uruguay, and then much of Argentina's main growing area continues to be cool and continues to be drier than normal. Just a lot of high pressure in spring. But across Brazil's central and northern growing areas, we continue to see above normal rains. And as a consequence, the report we got on Friday of planting progress is we're about 5% above the normal planting progress. Now, it's very early, but it's moving. And all the long-range forecast continues to suggest that there's going to be decent moisture in place across much of Brazil's central and northern growing areas, which just tends to push them along quickly. So it just kind of opens up their whole crop calendar if that first crop of soybeans goes in on time. So if there's pressure, it's down in Argentina.
Eric, anything else you're watching here around the globe, or anything else you want to mention before we run out of time today?
I don't know if I'm just being speculative here or seeing things that aren't real. But I don't like the fact that there's been a lot of chatter, and we've been watching quite a bit with what's going on with the polar vortex. It's very early. We shouldn't even be talking about this till December, January. But the early part of its setup happens now. And it's just not setting up fast. It's not developing a real strong vortex. And strong polar vortexes hold on to cold air and don't give it to us. You see, we're all worried right now about what energy prices might do this winter. If we could have a big colder outbreak that hits the eastern half of the country or Europe, that could really just spike the demand on that. So I just want people to know that I'm thinking about it, but don't you think about it much more than I'm telling you to do right now, because it's so early. But it's just something that, sometimes when we see a series of events that sets up that kind of puts, a lot of negative pressure on markets and things like that, well, a lot of times things can just change so quickly. So I'll be watching it carefully.
Well, we will not think about it until you tell us to think about it
Good.
again. We appreciate the time as always. You can sign up for Eric's daily weather newsletter on our website, markettalkag.com. With that, Eric Snodgrass of Nutrien, always appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us. Have a great week.
Yeah, thank you.